When you think of an indigenous American or Native person, what are the first things that come to mind? Photos in history books or images of the first Thanksgiving? Native Americans are far more than that. Despite their geographical isolation, shared some similarities with the customs and traditions of people worldwide. This was particularly evident in the way they approached relationships between men and women. While there were differences, there were also common themes that could be found among these tribes. In the following discussions, we'll explore some of the embarrassing things that the Native Americans do back in the day. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's go! Relationships. Intimacy among Native American tribes was a diverse tapestry of traditions, rules, and beliefs. Each tribe had its unique customs, resulting in a rich mosaic of practices that governed these close relationships. Let's explore this fascinating tapestry. Among the Apache, the agave harvest held special rules. It was believed that any form of intimacy during this time would taint the taste of the fruit, so such activities were strictly forbidden. Their connection to nature was evident in this prohibition. In contrast, many tribes had a different perspective. Men refrained from intimacy before embarking on journeys, considering it a way to preserve their strength for the challenges ahead. The wisdom of conserving energy was a prevalent belief in these communities. The Comanche, on the other hand, had a unique approach. They cherished their time with their beloveds, especially before military campaigns. It was a testament to their bonds and the support they derived from these relationships. The purpose of intimacy also varied. Some tribes viewed it as a means to conceive children, a vital part of their community's growth. For others, it primarily catered to men's satisfaction, with less emphasis on women's pleasure. Among the Shoshone tribe, women adhered to strict guidelines in public where maintaining decorum was paramount. Ritual significance often accompanied these practices. The Mandan tribe, for example, involved women and girls during the buffalo ritual, where they wore only skins. After satisfying their tribal chiefs, the young women took them into the forest for rituals with profound cultural and spiritual significance. Attending to the elders was a communal responsibility. Forced assimilation policies. Forced assimilation policies have had a devastating impact on Native American communities, particularly concerning the forcible removal of children from their families and their placement in boarding schools. These policies, implemented by the United States government from the late 19th century until the mid-20th century, aimed to eradicate Native American languages, cultures, and traditions. Native American children were forcibly taken from their homes and sent to boarding schools, where they were prohibited from speaking their own languages and practicing their cultural traditions. This systematic attempt to assimilate Native American children into mainstream American society had profound and long-lasting effects on their identity, well-being, and cultural heritage. The forced removal of Native American children from their families and communities was a deliberate effort to sever their connections to their cultural roots. By forbidding them from speaking their own languages and practicing their cultural traditions, the boarding schools sought to erase Native American identity and replace it with a Eurocentric worldview. This resulted in a loss of language fluency, cultural knowledge, and the intergenerational transmission of traditions. The children were often subjected to harsh discipline, physical abuse, and neglect in these institutions, further exacerbating the trauma they experienced. The impact of forced assimilation policies on Native American communities continues to be felt today. The loss of language fluency and cultural knowledge has had significant consequences for Native American identity and well-being. Many individuals and communities have struggled to reclaim their cultural heritage and revitalize their languages after decades of suppression. Furthermore, the intergenerational trauma caused by the forced removal of children has had a lasting effect on Native American families and communities. The absence of kissing during intimacy may seem unusual, but it was rooted in a protective instinct for the health of future generations. These practices and beliefs From the Apaches' respect for the agave harvest to the Mandan's rituals, were deeply woven into the tapestry of Native American culture. They showcased the intricate balance between tradition, spirituality, and human relationships within these diverse tribal communities. Horrors pile up quietly in The Other Slavery. The Other Slavery is a necessary work that occupies a loaded historical landscape, but that evidence speaks for itself, and the horrors quietly pile up. The enslavement of communities from North America and the Caribbean broke down entire nations and irreparably erased cultural and political ecosystems. American schoolchildren are taught that smallpox was the epidemic that gutted Native American populations after exposure to Europeans. An illness to which they had no immunity ravaged their numbers. A singular aspect of the enslavement of indigenous populations is the subterfuge involved. Several laws passed over the centuries forbade outright slavery, and much of the energy of slavers and governors went toward intricate justifications. Explorers, who often explicitly hoped to trade in human capital, claimed holy wars to bring heathen slaves to Christianity. Provincial governors invented punitive indentures to staff their gold and silver mines. Systems sustained themselves through legal justifications and relied on social collusion that made emancipation more difficult. How could you emancipate someone who wasn't technically a slave? It's unfortunate, though inevitable, that some of the facts under discussion have lost historical resonance amid the long-standing cloud of white defensiveness. The fact that some Native American nations sought to maintain autonomy by adapting European horticulture and becoming slavers themselves is an object lesson in the trickle-down horrors of colonialism, rather than self-contained billiard balls colliding with one another on the frontier. It's an unenviable task, handled well. Many of us know the broad strokes of the early decades of this wretched history, and the later history between the newly minted America and the way it treated those whose land the newcomers stole. But even if you know some of the embarrassing details, Native Americans only legally became citizens of their own country in 1924. The Other Slavery's understated just the facts reportage will likely surprise you. It's a study in the abuse of power that lays bare a shameful history and suggests a clear, chilling line to our present. Everybody's guilty, and while The Other Slavery isn't a call to action, it makes an intellectual and emotional demand of its readers as its scholarship echoes the lament of 19th-century Navajo leader Armijo, who appealed to the American government for the return of his people's lost children. Crimes. Rape was a grave crime among many Native American tribes, and the repercussions for the perpetrators could be severe, sometimes even resulting in the death penalty. However, the actual handling of such cases often varied from what might be expected. It's important to recognize that compensation, a common resolution, held substantial weight within Native American communities. Each tribe had its own distinct approach to addressing such crimes. Among the Apache, for instance, if a young man forced himself upon a woman who subsequently refused to marry him, the woman's relatives might propose a solution: marriage. Surprisingly, the offender often agreed to this arrangement. In the Zuni tribe, matters were typically handled publicly, with the victim holding the authority to determine the punishment. If the victim demanded the death of the offender, the sentence was execution. More frequently, though, the victim sought material compensation, which could be considerable. In the Ojibwe tribe, women sometimes lived in fear of violence, which was occasionally instigated by local shamans. A unique aspect of this tribe was the role of the shaman, a powerful and intimidating figure who sometimes acted as the perpetrator. The shaman might employ a particular tactic, warning the victim of an impending visit from an enchanter who would inhabit another man's body. Then, the shaman himself would assume this role. Women or girls often felt compelled to comply due to the shaman's significant influence. The shaman could absolve himself of responsibility by claiming that his body had been utilized by the spirit of his devotee without his consent. In the same tribe, a distinct practice dishonored stepdaughters, and the harshest punishment was the departure of both the mother and daughter from their husbands. These practices and beliefs regarding the crime of rape were profoundly entrenched in the cultural and social traditions of individual Native American tribes, reflecting their unique approaches to justice and reconciliation. Body disposition. Native American communities had various practices related to intimate relationships that, while different from classical prostitution, could be seen as having certain parallels. These practices were distinct among different tribes and reflected their unique cultural traditions. For example, in the Creek tribe, it was believed that even a married woman had autonomy over her body. Consequently, women in the tribe had the freedom to offer themselves for a night to a passerby or a guest. In contrast, the Salish tribe had a group of women, both married and single, who were designated to share their bed with individuals chosen by the elders. The tribe typically practiced polygamy, and like the Creeks, women had the right to make choices about their bodies. In many tribes, it was customary to offer a wife to a guest or traveler, a practice sometimes observed even by tribal chiefs when visiting neighboring tribes. In these cases, a woman's consent was not required, as men determined whom to send to the guest's bed. This practice was similar among the Omaha tribe, where a woman could face consequences if her relatives believed she was too liberal with her choices. Among the Papago tribe, special girls and women were permitted to engage in short-term relationships during various festivals. These relationships were created for the duration of the celebration, and young women would dance while adorned with various drawings and corn leaves. Men interested in someone would choose the woman they liked and establish a temporary family. Sometimes these relationships led to the formation of a permanent family. If not, the children born from these relationships were raised by their relatives as full-fledged members of the tribe. Among the neighboring Pima people, there was a distinct category of women seducers. This occupation was not stigmatized, and women had the autonomy to decide whether they wanted to be traditional wives or free-spirited women who engaged with new partners during holidays. These practices were specific to the cultural traditions and beliefs of different Native American tribes. Payback for cheating. Despite some degree of freedom in relationships between men and women among Native Americans, adultery was often severely punished in many tribes. However, there were exceptions, such as the Hopi tribe, which allowed a man to have what they referred to as a private wife, in addition to his lawful wife. In most tribes, adultery was a grave offense. Before marriage, a man typically bought his wife by offering significant gifts to her relatives. Consequently, a wife was seen as personal property, and any offense against her was considered a crime. Chiefs could respond to unfaithful wives by either expelling them from the tribe or selling them into slavery. Unfaithful wives might be subjected to shaving or beating, and in some cases, they would be returned to their relatives. In more severe instances, cheating wives were taken to the forest and tied to a tree, leaving them vulnerable to predators. Punishments for adultery varied from tribe to tribe. It's worth noting that men could also face consequences for infidelity. For instance, if a husband caught his wife with another man, he had the right to kill them both. Interestingly, women who suspected that their husbands were being or had been seduced by another woman would often publicly insult their rivals by throwing mud. The insulted wife's role was to publicly display her contempt for her female rival, describing all her flaws. In cases of extreme jealousy, a woman could even kill her husband, and there was generally no punishment for this act. However, such an act usually led to the end of the marriage, as the husband was the primary provider for the family. If there was no provider, it would be challenging to support the family. These practices were deeply rooted in the cultural and social traditions of different Native American tribes. Cultural appropriation. Cultural appropriation refers to the adoption, borrowing, or imitation of elements from one culture by members of another culture. Unfortunately, Native American cultures have been prime targets for cultural appropriation throughout history. This exploitation and misrepresentation of Native American cultures is a deeply troubling issue that has had significant consequences. Sacred symbols, attire, and rituals have been appropriated for commercial gain or used as stereotypes in popular culture, perpetuating harmful stereotypes and disrespecting the rich traditions and beliefs of Native American communities. One of the most concerning aspects of cultural appropriation is the commercial exploitation of Native American cultures. Companies frequently use sacred symbols and attire in their marketing campaigns without understanding or respecting their cultural significance. This not only cheapens the value of these symbols, but also reinforces the idea that Native American cultures are nothing more than commodities to be bought and sold. The misappropriation of Native American cultures for commercial gain perpetuates harmful stereotypes and reduces their complex traditions to mere fashion trends. Furthermore, cultural appropriation has played a significant role in perpetuating stereotypes about Native American communities. Many popular culture representations of Native Americans rely on outdated and inaccurate portrayals, such as the noble savage or the stoic warrior. These stereotypes not only reinforce harmful biases, but also overlook the diverse cultures, histories, and contributions of Native American communities. By appropriating and misrepresenting sacred symbols, attire, and rituals, popular culture further perpetuates these harmful stereotypes, contributing to the marginalization and erasure of Native American cultures. It is crucial that we acknowledge and address the issue of cultural appropriation in relation to Native American cultures. Respect for cultural diversity and understanding the significance of sacred symbols, attire, and rituals is paramount. It is essential for individuals and companies alike to engage in meaningful dialogue with Native American communities, seeking their guidance and permission when representing their cultures. By doing so, we can work towards honoring and preserving the rich traditions of Native American cultures while putting an end to their exploitation and misrepresentation. Smoking heavily. High smoking rates have taken a devastating toll on the Native American, particularly those in the Northern Plains region. Among all racial and ethnic groups, American Indian adults have the highest smoking rate in the United States, and are nearly twice as likely to succumb to lung cancer compared to white Americans. This glaring health disparity extends to various diseases, including cardiovascular disease, lung cancer, and throat cancer, as emphasized by Madison Anderson, an Anishinaabe doctoral student in epidemiology at the University of Minnesota. Her research delves into the interplay between cardiovascular disease, tobacco use, and American Indian communities. One of the significant challenges in addressing this issue is the undersampling of American Indians in national health surveys, resulting in a lack of region-specific data across the more than 576 federally recognized tribes. For instance, the smoking and tobacco-related mortality rates significantly differ between American Indians in the Northern Plains and those in the Southwest. Various tribes also have diverse cultural and secular relationships with sacred and commercial tobacco. However, many smoking cessation programs fail to consider the sacred role of tobacco in American Indian culture and do not differentiate between little tobacco and the commercial variety, leading to a disconnect in anti-tobacco messaging. Sean Brown's experience in 2015 highlights this disconnection when he attempted to quit smoking. Having used commercial tobacco for over a decade, smoking a pack a day in his early 20s, he faced health issues. It was only in 2020, after experiencing gum disease, that he reached his breaking point. Gum disease not only affects oral health, but can also harm blood vessels in the heart and brain over time. Addressing high smoking rates among American Indians necessitates culturally sensitive approaches that acknowledge the sacred significance of tobacco and differentiate between traditional and commercial use. Achieving health equity for American Indian communities requires a comprehensive understanding of their cultural context and challenges surrounding tobacco use. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, and explore our other videos on our channel, and I will see you on the next video.